What's up, everybody? Back at you with another video. Um, this time today about step three, which step three is, I want to say, probably one of the most important videos that, or important steps that we end up talking about. Oh, my dog's doing some cute stuff. Look at this animal. Look at her. Kelly. Bless you. Oh, I thought you were going to sneeze. She's scratching herself. Kelly always has to make a cameo. Ugh, yeah, don't you? She's licking my hand. Kelly, that's disgusting. Let me make the video, okay? You're going to have to go lay down. Go lay down. Come on. You know how to do that. Go lay down, doggy. See, if you say it to her, no. I'm gonna say it in my Anita's voice. Kelly, go lay down. I don't think she understands. The cat's acting up too. But anyway, I'm sorry. Let's get back to the video. Step three is one of the, what I believe to be one of the most important steps that that I end up talking about. Because step three reads like this: that you are free to decide what you believe about your substance use, and three things, because it's step three, that you're going to have to decide. Number one, what it is. Number two, how it started. And then number three, how you end it. And I chose those three specifically because they seem to have, those three questions seem to have the biggest impact on how somebody's life looks going forward after a substance use problem. And what I mean by that is, so, what it is, that determines a few things. What it is determines whether it's a disease, whether it's a choice, a spiritual problem, emotional problem, or a combination of many other factors. How it started, well, what it is, your answers to that is essentially going to determine your life going forward after a substance abuse issue. And then how it started determines in a lot of cases the type of treatment that somebody is going to get, or essentially it will determine the main problem, or the main influence rather, into somebody's using. And then how you end it is, well, that's self-explanatory. That determines essentially how you end it, and how you, based off of what you decide for how you end it, determines in a lot of cases, again, kind of a quality of life issue. So some people believe that they need to end it with meetings and rigorous kind of treatment protocols, which, Callie, quit it. Please. Thank you. I'm trying to make a dang video, dog. Now look, she's sitting right there, just messing with the cat, at the most inconvenient time. Okay, but anyway, how you end it, again, that is a pretty big lifestyle choice. The person who believes they have to end it with rigorous, again, treatment, or meetings and the like, is going to end up living a completely different life than somebody who believes that they can end it, let's say, just simply by a choice. The choice of not to do it again. Which, if I'm being honest with you, for me and myself, that's the camp that I fall in. from the not addicted approach perspective, the only thing that makes you use is your decision to do that. And so for me, as long as I don't decide to do that, then well, I guess circumstances don't matter. Uh, the people I'm around doesn't really affect me. The places I go, again, doesn't really have too much of an impact on me. Um, at least when it comes to substance using. So, again, for the person who has taken on the idea that this addiction is a disease, and this goes to that first question, what it is. Let's say you view it as a disease. Then that, again, is going to have major implications on how you decide to live going forward. So the person, again, who believes they suffer with the disease, maybe they don't go certain places. Maybe they don't engage in certain activities. Like for me, I'll go to, I'll go to a concert, for instance, where there's people there smoking weed, there's people there drinking, arguably probably people there doing other things as well. And because I believe it's my choice to do this stuff or not, if I see somebody doing that, that has little to no effect on me. If at the end of the day I don't want to do it, I'm not going to. Just like I used to work at a Tim Hortons, and so just like I go to Tim Hortons still, I see people who are working at Tim Hortons still. That doesn't mean I want to work there again. And if somebody were to drop an application in front of me, I'm not going to be sitting here going, oh my goodness, I'm struggling to not fill out this application. But we have that narrative on addiction that if you see these things, if you see these people, Callie, don't do it. Sit down. You heard me. Come on, sit down. No, I told you, don't be messing around. Don't be playing right now. Okay, I'm trying to make a video. Yeah, get the fear burps, get the fear farts out, because I know you love to fear fart. All right. Now she's. Oh my God. Y'all are just gonna have to deal with my dog and the cat. In all fairness, they're both in a very playful mood because Daddy just got home, and so they want to play because they're happy. I love them though; they're great animals. See, this is where you get to see like a little bit of my at home, type of life. Got 2 pets, 2 animals. I've also got 2 other humans, a wife and a tiny human. They're not here right now though, which is why I'm making the video. But anyway, getting back to what I was talking about, with that what it is component, what it is, I believe, will determine whether you see yourself as somebody who is living with a handicap for the rest of their life. For instance, the disease of addiction. Or you see yourself as somebody who has chosen to end, yes, Kitty, to end a, what would you want to call it, a maladaptive habit. Yes, Charles, that's great. It's awesome. See, the cat agrees. He's meowing right now as I'm saying this. The cat's like, yes, this guy is right. You should listen to him. Or maybe you shouldn't. I don't know. It depends on you. If you like it, cool. If you don't, look, that's fine. There's plenty of other ways to approach this issue other than, the way in which I approach it. And so, yeah, again, the that disease component, and how you view it, what it is, it determines whether you live with a handicap for the rest of your life, or, for instance, it determines whether you see yourself as a normal individual who again is making a decision to change, or you see yourself as somebody who is, well, not normal. And that's a philosophy that kind of goes with the disease approach to addiction, is that there's this idea that you're no longer normal because you've had these experiences with substances. And there's an addiction comedian out there. I forget his name, and I kind of use him to highlight this point because if he says a joke and maybe like one person laughs at it, he will go then see that's the addict. The rest of you are normal people. And I don't know. I don't agree with that notion. And it's kind of like I talked about in the last video. It's again you're using this premise of normal, that do we even really know what that is? And so I believe that we're all unique, we're all different, and we all need a specific and I guess individually tailored approach to this problem. And so, and finally the last one is, determining what it is will determine whether you're living the rest of your life in recovery, which, let's be honest, isn't really being free of addiction. Recovery is literally you formulating the rest of your life after using around the fact that you used to use. And I look at that and I say, well, that's not freedom from addiction at all. So you can see yourself based off of what you determine for what it is, as somebody who is in this constant state of recovery and, let's say, always at the risk of a relapse, or you're somebody who has chosen to move on from a problem and you're changing your life. All right, so there's some major differences there, all pretty much determined by what you decide this is. All right, so we can move on to how it started. And my goodness. How it started, I guess, is the question that kind of confuses pretty much everything with addiction. You could have started because it was fun. Because if you're, if you're getting high, I guarantee for a time you viewed it as a fun thing to do, absolutely. I know I did. You can see that, or you can view it that it started because of trauma. You can view it as it started because of social influences in the environment. You can even take the biological approach that, let's say, you were genetically predisposed to having an addiction problem. All right. I mean, look, these are all viable options, but at the same time, we need to make sure that whatever we choose for that is in line with who we wish to become. And so, and oftentimes too, depending on what you say it is and how it started, will often determine the type of treatment you get if you're going into a treatment setting. So if I say it started because of an adverse childhood experience when I was younger, well, then during my treatment phase, we're going to primarily look at like that adverse experience, or we're going to look at trauma, right? If you tell me that it started because of environmental factors, then we're going to spend time focusing on that environment and what can we do to kind of improve that environment or maybe even change it. If you say it started because of emotional things, you're feeling a certain way, you didn't want to feel that way anymore, and so you found using can help you not feel a certain way. Well, then in the treatment process, we're probably going to focus on, okay, how can we change your relationship to these emotions that you believe were causing you to use. And so, I kind of highlight my story a little bit with, for instance, when I entered treatment and the kind of the dangers, or at least the ways in which, if you don't have this clearly thought out and if you don't clearly identify in your own mind how you believe this started, then it could go wrong. And I usually highlight this with, essentially, again, the story of when I entered treatment. And I remember entering treatment and basically, My counselor asked me some of the classic questions. Like number one, she asked me, Jake, well, why are you here? Um, and I kind of looked at that as kind of a weird question. It's like, well, I mean, it's a methadone clinic. That's where I went for my treatment. I did a Suboxone program through a methadone clinic, and it's a methadone clinic, and they're asking me why I'm here. Again, I thought that was kind of a ridiculous question. I know why they were asking it, because you deal with people from like where they're at, or you address them where they're at. And so that's more of a question of to, kind of figure out, okay, what in my mind is the thing that brought me here. And I just remember answering that with, well, I liked heroin. I'm addicted to heroin. I don't want to be anymore. And so you guys are advertised as treatment, and so here I am. Then they asked me that question of, like, why did I do heroin? And again, I thought that was, at least in my mind, I thought, again, that's a stupid question. Well, why does anybody do heroin? Um, it feels good. We can start with that. Um, I wanted to get high. We can go to that. And other than feeling good, wanting to get high, and then eventually it became withdrawal avoidance. And really wasn't about getting high anymore. It's just about, making sure you don't go through withdrawal. And so I detailed that, and I said that's why I did heroin. And then the questions where everything gets complicated came up. Like the questions about your past. They wanted to know about my upbringing, and so I told them the key points of my life. I told them, well, number one, I was raised in a Christian home. It was pretty strict, to an extent, and then my parents, when I was in fourth grade, they got a divorce because my father had cheated on my mother. He was also an alcoholic, and he ended up moving to first down to southern Michigan and then to Ohio. Um, and me and my brother stayed with our mother. And then I detailed that because of my father's drinking habit, he ended up dying, not too really not too long into it, just due to the volume that he was drinking. He ended up dying from it, and I told my counselor all of these things, and my goodness, as I like to put it, I walked into that session with one problem. Um, I didn't want to do heroin anymore. I've been doing heroin. I don't want to do it anymore. I left that session, or I should say this, I was too stubborn. And so I didn't leave the session with that many problems. But my counselor insisted that I had various problems. And the way I put it is, had I taken my counselor's various opinions about me and what was going on, then again, I would have walked out of that session with various issues, like many issues. So because I grew up in a strict home and with a relatively strict upbringing comparatively to my peers, they insisted that when I got older, I perhaps had an issue with ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder. Basically, rebelling against the authority, because growing up the way that I did, strict, um, that caused this rebellious streak in me. And then because my father had cheated on my mother, it was insinuated that perhaps I had relational issues that led to trust issues that led to perhaps personality issues, um, due to that, that breaking of trust among my parents and how that might have affected me. Um, and then because my father was an alcoholic, I obviously had a genetic predisposition to becoming an addict as well. And then my father moving away to these other places, and me and my brother stay with our mother. perhaps I had abandonment issues. And then, the one that took the cake is because my father died, I had number one trauma and grief as well that perhaps I haven't dealt with. And so it was insinuated to me that I was using heroin not because I wanted to get high, but because I had to cope with those things that happened. I mean, I really just remember kind of telling my counselor, like, okay, I mean, in all fairness to her, that could be it. But the problem is one thing. I don't see it that way at all. In my mind, I was looking at it like I was using because, well, my neighbor was my dealer. I grew up with these people. My first hit of weed was with them. My first Vicodin was with them. They provided the supply of Opanas, morphine, opiates, and stuff like that, which eventually led me into an environment where heroin was available and it was a lot cheaper than all of that stuff. And so I said, well, it's an opiate and it does a similar thing. I'll do it. But my counselor was trying to insist that that wasn't the main issue. And I looked at that and I'm like, well, I don't know, counsel. I think you might actually be wrong, the expert on the issue might actually be wrong. Can you imagine that? I think it happens more often than we like to think. But that made me realize that, at least when it comes to treating this problem, when it comes to dealing with an addiction problem, we need to learn how to separate our life from our using. And what I mean by that is there are things that certainly had an impact on your life. It's like all those things that my counselor insisted was the cause of my using. Well, they certainly had an impact on my life, but the problem is, in my own mind, they had nothing to do with why I ever started using heroin. But here I have this person trying to make all of these connections. And so again, I say, learn to separate your life from your using, unless you want your life to be about using. Unless you want to connect all of these various issues to your using as well. Not everything that has happened in your life had something to do with why you started using substances, or why you started getting drunk or getting high or whatever. Not everything had something to do with that. If you came to your own conclusion that these things had an influence on it, then that's your prerogative. But don't sit there and just take the expert's evaluation that all of these things in your life led to you being the addict. It's just, again, that's so subjective and so, I guess you could say, individual. And that's why it's so important for you yourself to decide how this started. Think for yourself on this matter and develop your own conclusion about it. Don't just take the expert's opinion just because they're quote unquote expert. We've seen that go wrong a lot. And unfortunately, people still apparently trust them. Okay, that's what it is, and why it's important, again, for you to figure those things out. Had I taken on my counselor's reasons or her explanations for why I started doing heroin, then my solution to my problem would have gotten very complicated. I would have gone from someone who said, I just need to quit and not do it again, to somebody who said, okay, it's not that simple. It can't just be you just quit, but you have to address all of these other issues on top of it. And if you don't, then you're going to end up, let's say, having a relapse. And it's just like the solution then to the problem becomes so complicated. And I would have spent a lot of time trying to address certain issues that, in my mind, had nothing to do with the problem. And so that would have ended up with a lot of wasted energy and a lot of, well, I guess you could say just a lot of confusion, you know? So, um, again, what it is, that's important to think about. And so we'll move on to how we end it here. This one can sometimes get me in trouble because I say it like this. The simplest explanation to an addiction problem, or the simplest solution to an addiction problem is quit. Stop. Don't do it anymore. I really don't know why people get offended when it's said like that, because there's something that we do need to acknowledge, and what we need to acknowledge is this: is that it doesn't matter what type of treatment you're getting. It doesn't matter whether you're getting CBT, outpatient therapy, group therapy, inpatient therapy, DBT, EMDR, hypnotherapy, psychedelic therapy, hippie therapy, you know, fancy meditation stuff. My approach, it doesn't matter what type of therapy you're getting. We all work for the same goal, no matter what. And that goal is to get you to stop using. That goal is to get you to quit. And for me, I believe keeping the solution to the problem simple is probably your best bet. Keeping it as simple as you can. As I like to say, addiction, and if you're struggling with this, just understand, addiction is the only thing that would end if you literally just sat at home and did nothing. Like, I'm at home. If I just sat in this chair all day for the rest of my life and did nothing, I would not have an addiction problem. Now, mind you, that's not a reasonable way to live or anything like that, but I'm using that example simply to highlight a point. Addiction would end if you literally just did nothing. So this is why I don't like the comparisons to like cancer, for instance. I'm sorry, but addiction is not like cancer. I don't care. Cancer, if you sat at home and did nothing, is going to get worse and you will die. Addiction, if you sat at home and did nothing, would not exist. The drugs are not just going to randomly, on their own, enter your body. And so how you end it, it's simple. You quit. So how I like to kind of I like to make an analogy for this. And the analogy is this, is that if you've ever flown on a plane to somewhere, like when I was in grade school, 5th grade to be exact, my family and we took a trip out to Las Vegas, believe it or not, for a family reunion of sorts. And on the way to Vegas, or I guess you could say, well, I should preface it with this. Number one, I've never been on a plane before that time. And then number two, I'd never been to Vegas. And so the only idea I had about it was that, well, I guess you could say it was an idea given to me by Ocean's 11 or something. The only idea I had about Vegas is based off of what I've seen in movies, entertainment stuff, whatever. And so I really didn't know what fully to expect. And if you've ever flown to Vegas on a plane, well, it's very interesting because, we're flying out there and the pilot gets over the intercom, and over the intercom, he says, if you look out your right side window, you'll see Las Vegas coming into view. And I was like, okay, cool. Here we go. Get my first glimpse of Vegas. Well, there was a few problems. Number one, it was during the daytime. And then number two, I'm on a plane. And Las Vegas from a plane during the day, I'll illustrate, so you see this big white wall. Pretend that's my field of view, and pretend that my finger here just pointing at this little dot or whatever. I wish I had a better example, but just pretend, all right, there's this little dot right here in this view of this whole wall. That little dot, that little speck, is what Vegas looked like from a plane. You see, Vegas from a plane looks like this shiny little tiny dot in the middle of this huge desert. And I remember looking at my mother saying, like, that's Vegas? Like, that's where we're going. This little tiny dot in the middle of this huge desert. I was disappointed. Because in my mind, it wasn't at all what I expected it to be. But then, we start getting closer, and then you start seeing certain things come into view, right? Like you see, there's the stratosphere. You could start to make out the MGM, the Luxor Hotel and pyramid shape, New York, Excalibur, stuff like that. So you could start to see those things, and then you also start to notice that like there's this giant road, kind of angle. It goes straight and then it takes a sharp angle slightly, and it's this giant road that me being from a smaller town, it's like you've never seen a road that big. And so I'm looking at that road. My mother says, "Oh yeah, that's the Strip." And our hotel is right on, that strip. And then not only that, but you could see from that plane that that road leads out both directions of the city. It's like if you ever got lost, here's the landmark, right? Find this road. Everything you need is on it. And then if you need to get the heck out of the city, take it one direction or the other and you'll get out. And so, I remember that strip being there. And then finally we land in Vegas. And that's when, that's when the perspective changes, right? Because now everything is huge. You're on the ground, you see all this stuff, massive buildings, people, tons of traffic, everything else. And and we finally land and I'm looking around and I'm like, my goodness, this place is huge now. All the details that I could make out from the plane, the clear image that I had from the plane is now blocked. Like you take the strip, for example, it's like I can't see the strip anymore now that we've landed. All these buildings are in the way. There's all of these people, these cars, these roads, and everything else, and they're blocking the view to that strip. I said, like we need a map or else we're going to get lost. And, now, I knew, though, that the strip was still there. This road that, again, has everything on it. Our hotel was on it. And if you needed to get out, you go out both directions. And I remember that the strip is still there. It didn't go away. It's still in the midst of all of this, I guess, clutter, if you will, that I see now. That building there, that person there, that car there, and stuff like that. And I like to use kind of that example of what it's like to be above that city and far away on the plane initially, and then you get closer, things start to come into view, and then you land, and now it's like, holy crap, this thing is huge, and the way out, and the road that has everything on it is now blocked, and I can't see it, I can't find it. I view this as very very comparative to addiction. Uh, for a lot of us starting out with the addiction stuff, you're on that plane and it's just this tiny little speck in the middle of this huge desert or in the middle of this huge, field of view, right? But it's just this tiny little dot. And then we get closer and things start to come into view. You start to notice the details of it. You start to see certain, like, okay, there's the stratosphere, there's the strip, there's, and that's the important part, is that while you're still at that point, you can still see, you haven't landed yet, you're not in the city, but you can still see that from the vantage point that there's this road that if you get lost, find your way to it, everything you need is on it, and it leads out of that city in both directions. And then you land, and now you're in the city of addiction. And the strip, that road that had everything on it and led out both directions, that's lost to you now. You can't find it because there's all this stuff blocking the view. There's that massive building there, and we can call that your hyper focus on mental health. There's this other building over there. We can call that the concrete trappings of recovery. There's that building over there. And we can call that, like, make your meetings or else, right? Then there's that person there. That's your therapist who is telling you you're diseased, you're disordered, and is trying to make all these different connections to why you started using and everything else. And is trying to convince you that ending it is not as simple as just quitting. But even though you're in that city, there's still that road. Like we said, the strip didn't go anywhere. And it's like, what is the strip of the city of addiction? It's called stop. It's called quit. It's the road that if you only got on it, if you got past all of these different distractions that are blocking your view of that, and you just got on that road and you followed it out one direction or the other, it would take you out of this. And this is why I believe keeping it simple is so important. And understanding and never losing sight that the simplest explanation to this problem, or the simplest solution to this problem, is to quit. It's like, it's like you going into that city, but never losing the view of the road, of the strip that has everything on it and leads out both directions. I personally believe that we can only help ourselves by doing this. Some of us are in that city and we're lost. And everything's blocking this view. We don't have the destination marker, which, again, in this case would be make it to the strip and then just follow that road. But we've lost sight of that. And for some of us, what I like to view, or the way that I like to view how I do things, is that I like to think that I'm kind of trying to take people out of that city for a second and reorient their direction, or reorient that compass, or allow them, while they're removed from that city, to set the destination point. And to do that, you have to, in some cases, shed these ideas of mental health, of disorder, of trauma, of all of these different connections to the past that, keep you from reaching that particular goal of, like, look, just quit. And I know that, again, that sounds very simple, but one thing that I like to say is don't conflate simplicity with ease. Just because something is simple doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be easy, but we should never lose sight that there's a simple explanation. And that the solution is not that complicated. And then just because something isn't easy doesn't mean it's impossible, right? And so don't lose sight of those things. Oh, man. But all right, though. I guess I'm pretty satisfied with that. I think. I hope you are too. That's step 3. This video has been about 40 minutes now. I've been talking a while. And my brain hurts. And I'm hungry. And so I'm going to get food. Or rather, I'm not going to get it. I'm going to make food on my stove with a frying pan and a spatula and olive oil, probably some garlic, lemon juice, a salmon. God, I'm getting hungry. All right, I'm gonna go before I compulsively decide to start eating against my will because I suffer from the disease of eating food and I can't help myself. I'm sorry. I know I poke fun. But at the end of the day, I wish everybody the best. And again, the good news is about this problem with addiction and even with mental health and everything else. I mean, look, there's hope. There's plenty of hope out there. But in order to find it, I think you need to get out of the circles that are giving you the ideas to ensure that you just keep coming back. So that's what I got. Until the next time, we'll see you later, people. Peace.